This is a Husqvarna Model 41. It's one of the many Poulan built Husqvarnas, and this was a customer saw, and I wanted just to relay a couple of things I found on it because I have a hunch I'm not the only person who's going to run into the same things, and I suspect not just this saw but others of the same basic configuration are going to have similar type issues. When it came into the shop, it had some pretty standard fuel starvation type issues. So, you know, I'm not going to bore you with having me twist screws and stuff like that. Pulled the carburetor off, gave it a carb kit, gave it a fuel line because the fuel line itself was a little bit rotted. Put it all back together, still had fuel starvation problems. Very, very frustrated after that, so next time around I pulled everything from the cylinder back to the carburetor off and found that. And this little rubber grommet that's sitting inside the cylinder. And when you push that plastic mounting system back, it's supposed to seal. Well, that failed. Now, I want to point out that this particular design, where you have that mounting system, that manifold, there's a rubber boot there, and then there's, of course, there's a grommet that fits on that inside the cylinder. It's common to these Poulan Husqvarnas, but also to Husqvarna Model 51s and 55s. So should you have a 51 and 55 and you get frustrated because you can't seem to beat a fuel starvation issue, go right to that impulse pipe and that impulse tube grommet for the fix right there. Put it back together, still had fuel starvation problems, but this time it was my fault, it wasn't other issues. The way you route that fuel line, if you're not careful, you can do what I did and have it pinch right there. Or should you make the mistake of routing that fuel line behind this guide for the carburetor adjustment screws, this line, if you put it behind that, it's going to pinch every time. Once I figured all that out, rerouted the fuel line, fixed the grommet, replaced it from Bob's. I actually just put a new carburetor on it because I just didn't want to fight with it anymore. There's nothing wrong with this now, I realize. Put it back together, it runs fine. So that's my 5-minute summary of PITA 41. And I guess the moral of the story is, you get into one of these things, really the best thing to do is just tear everything off from cylinder back to carburetor, actually from cylinder to air filter, and just start replacing rubber parts, because more likely than not, like on this saw, it was a multiple of issues that finally made it stop, not one in by itself. You can't see down in there, but you can see that impulse tube where it meets the cylinder. That grommet sits down in there. That had failed. If you look at the end of this, just from the vibration over the years, that's not going to make a good seal anyway. Carb kit. It needed a carb kit. Fuel line was rock hard and was cracking right where it exits the tank. So all those things needed to get done in reality. I ended up having to route the fuel line like this, because even when I went up across the front there, it got pinched a little bit by the air filter mounting structure there. I don't know if you can see that. I tried before routing it up behind the carburetor. That looked like a natural route, but it got interfered with the controls in the carburetor. But anyway, that complex routing seems like there's nothing that's going to pinch it. So That's what I came up with. I'm sure there's others who go up the other side of the carburetor, or where it was supposed to go originally that was pinched, by the way. When I pulled out the original line, it was in fact pinched a little bit behind that plastic piece right there. So that's why I've rerouted it so that line doesn't have any pinch points. I probably would have saved myself a couple of hours if I had just taken my own advice. Cylinder to air filter. Everything in between that's rubber and plastic, replace the stuff. Anyway, that's not just for the 41s, it's for the 51s and the 55s. That's my advice.